In today's video, we are going to be checking out this O-ring motherboard from AliExpress. This motherboard comes with an engineering sample laptop CPU with 14 cores and 20 threads. This CPU is soldered directly to the motherboard, and the seller claims it is based off a mobile i7 13th gen. Now for our test, we will be using integrated graphics and 32GB of RAM, and all of that is installed in an Ion's M80X case combined with a very overkill 550W Corsair power supply. The motherboard has a nice set of basic features considering its price. It has two USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports supporting 10 Gbps USB speeds and a 2.5 Gb Ethernet port, which is nice to see on such a cheap board. For video outputs, it has two HDMI ports which are capable of up to 4K, as well as a display port which does not work with most DisplayPort to DVI adapters. Now let's look at the internal I/O, which looks like nothing special, but should be everything you need with a front USB 3.0 port and a couple of fan and USB headers. The reason this board is so cheap may be the lack of a PCIe X16 header. The seller claims this is because the engineering sample CPUs have some sort of issue preventing the slot from working. However, there still is a PCI 4X slot which is capable of running GPU. There are also two Gen 4x4 SSDs and a Wi-Fi card slot with a single lane of PCIe. So, assuming you don't need a dedicated GPU, this is an amazing deal. Now, let's test some games. So the first game I'm going to test is CS2, so I'm just going to go straight to the settings. And I'm on 720p, 60Hz, at all of the lowest settings, as you can see here, with VSync turned off and the max frame rate. So let's just hop into a match. And now as you can see, we are in game, and the temperature of the CPU is around 50 to 55 degrees Celsius. And we are at 110 to 130 FPS, so it's running pretty good, except it is using a lot of our RAM, which is fine because we're equipped with 32GB of it, which is quite a lot for this thing, but you know how RAM is nowadays. Now running on 720p, it is doing quite well, maybe too well, so I'm going to change from 720p to 1080p while maintaining the same graphics settings of low. Now, as you can see, we're on 1080p, even though we're still getting decent FPS, around 80, dipping down to the high 50s in FPS, which is quite good. And our CPU has spiked up in the temperature, going around 60, 62 Celsius. However, it's nothing too bad, and this is still totally playable if you have a 60Hz monitor. However, for an esports title, a lot of people would prefer to have something like 144Hz. So in that case, it might not be the best for you, but this is just for casual use, and for that, it's pretty good. But do be aware that the RAM usage does spike up a lot. So as you can see, the next game we are testing is Valheim. So I'm just going to show you my settings real quick. I'm on 720p, full screen, no VSync, at all medium settings. So let's just load up the game. And as you can see, we are now in Valheim, and the FPS looks great, around 67, and the temperature of the CPU is even lower at 45, 44 than those esports titles. Oh god, yeah, I'm dying here, definitely. But yeah, Valheim is being handled greatly, less than a gig of RAM usage, hovering around the 60s of FPS to the early 70s, a very low temperature, very low RAM usage. So the next game we are testing is GTA 5, so let's just see our settings here. And as you can see, I am on 720p, 60Hz, casual refresh rate monitor, on all normal aka medium settings. So let's just go to the benchmark and see how this performs. And as you can see, we are now loaded into the benchmark, getting around 90 FPS, which is very good, especially for this class of machine. and the GPU usage is quite high considering there's integrated graphics, and the memory usage is not near the amount that CS2 was on. However, the CPU temperature is about the same CS2 was on, reaching a bit lower and 46 degrees sometimes, but about the same, and 100 FPS is totally playable. And maybe if you have a high refresh rate monitor, like 240Hz, you beg to differ, but no one's using 240Hz monitor in this class of machine. As you can see, the memory usage spikes up there, but apart from that, we're looking fine in this case. And even with these intense waterfalls, we still get 120-ish, 90 FPS. So that's all looking good. With the daylight changes, though, we are dipping to about 80, which is sad to see, but oh well. What can you do? This flying section, we get higher FPS for some reason. Don't know why, but it's really strange. So, this is performing really well. And I would recommend this if you want to play, you know, those older games, 2013, like GTA, the lower settings, because they're totally playable. Double the FPS then to be comfortable with, which is very impressive to see. So I think it's time to move on to the next game. And so now we're going to do GTA 5 again, but on non-benchmark mode. So we're just going to do a story mode test on the exact same settings as last time. So as you can see, we are in the game, and the game is running great at 90 FPS. Quite low GPU and memory usage, surprisingly, but that CPU temperature is around the same 50 degrees CS2 and GTA Benchmark was on, maybe a little higher. But yeah, 90 FPS. That's a little lower than the benchmark, but still amazing if you just want to roam around and play the game like normal. So let's get in a vehicle real quick to see how this CPU performs while we're in action. And so we're driving off, and let's see what happens when we get a higher speed. Already this happens with most games. The memory usage has gotten higher. You know, that's just what happens when you play on time. Let's get in a high speed chase. Crashing into things, FPS lowers a bit, but nothing crazy, like a dip below 60 that would make the game a bit sluggish to play. But yeah, crashing. The game is unfazed throughout all of this, which is quite cool. That you can now play what used to be decade ago high-end games that you need a good PC for on integrated graphics CPU from what used to be a joke website. It's very interesting to see the RAM usage still keeps on going up. The CPU temperature has gone up, now it's in the mid-50s, and the FPS has been stable, staying the same. Going on the mountain, crashing into things because there's less space to load in, getting around 150 FPS here, and to be honest, this is all looking great, so I think it's time to move on to the next game. And as you can see, the next game we are testing is Roblox. So the first game we are going to test is Frontlines, and I'm going to hit play. And the reason I'm testing Frontlines is because it's one of the more graphically intensive Roblox games, and I just wanted to see how this one performed. And the graphic settings are on the default right now, so I'm going to make sure they're on 5, which is what we usually set them to. And yeah, it's running great, 60 FPS locked. I will change the graphics quality in a minute, but in this game I've seen that really doesn't impact the graphics quality that much. Like, it looks about the same, but it impacts the FPS for some reason. So if you buy a kid this motherboard to build a PC, it's running great. So let's just change the graphics quality to the highest. Didn't make much difference, but as you can see, the FPS is now lowering down into the 50s, the 40s, 30s, and it's gotten a bit worse, but still totally playable for most people that don't have a high refresh rate monitor. And yeah, this game runs amazingly. So I'm just going to put it on the lowest graphics settings, or around 5ish again, and as you can see, running great. The lowest graphics settings makes quite a big difference in terms of FPS. Runs really smooth now. So that's great, especially for a CPU that's not meant for the average consumer. So the next game we are now going to test is going to be Doors. So I'm just going to search Doors. And as you can see, we're on the same, I think was it 5 we were on last time? I'm not sure, but in the lobby of Doors, it's always the FPS is higher than in the actual game. So let's get into a game here. But first, let's check our graphics settings. We're on the lowest. And as you can see, it works better in the lobby, but you're not going to be playing the game in the lobby. So let's set it back to 5. And let's get in a game. Let's just go into a thing here. As you can see, we are now in the game. And in the elevator, looks like we're running fine. Doors usually has no problem. It's one of those lighter Roblox games. Anyways, yeah, Roblox is running fine at the automatic graphics setting. For some reason 5 is the automatic graphics setting. I don't know why. Because it's in the middle. I'm not sure. But yeah, runs a lot better than those iPads most players play on. And if I turn this up to the highest graphics quality, which I will in a minute, it will probably run exactly the same, because Roblox, after all, it's nothing hard to run. So, just change it. And on the highest graphics, we're still running fine. Maybe a little choppy when moving the mouse, but, you know, it's still running great. And, yeah, it's great. Feels great. Yeah, moving the mouse, a bit choppy. But maybe it's just that this game is unoptimized on the highest graphics quality. Apart from that, the game runs fine. So, I think that's enough Roblox testing. And let's move on to the next game, And so, as you can see, the next game we are testing is Minecraft. On Java with the latest version. No optimizations made, just these settings, which is 16 chunks, VSync turned off, smooth lighting on with fancy graphics at 1080p. Did you get all that? Didn't think so. So let's just hop into a single player world here and see how the thing performs. And wow, at 16 chunks, this is performing incredibly for an AliExpress CPU motherboard combo. 130 FPS. How about in the sky while looking the distance? It maintains its FPS. No, not as much. But wow, I'm impressed for AliExpress motherboard and CPU to get 100 FPS 16 chunks. Because Minecraft has struggled a lot in our previous tests. So I was not expecting this little price bump up. Well, it's not little, but a little more money for this much more performance. It's very worth it. 100 FPS. And let's just go down here. Goes all the way up to 130, 160 FPS. I'm impressed. Let's do a TNT test real quick. Was unfazed during that. It only hit like bottom of 40 FPS. Now it's back up to 100. Damn. This computer handles Minecraft better than I thought. But can it handle 32 chunks? Let's find out. Oh, the computer's making a bit more noise with the chunk change. And as you can see right here, the transition, it's in the 30s of FPS, which is worse, but it hasn't loaded in all the chunks yet. So I'm just going to wait for it to load in chunks. And so here we are. Most of the chunks have loaded, and at 32 chunks in the sky we are getting around 30-ish to 40 FPS while in the sky. However, on land with 32 chunks, we are getting the same FPS. Oh, never mind. We are getting around 40 to 50 FPS, depending on the circumstances and where the farthest viewable distance is to you when you're standing on the ground. Going up, the FPS definitely does go down. And so that concludes our Minecraft testing. And the last test we will be doing next is going to be Cbench. We ran Cbench and got a multi-core score of 14,142 and a single core score of 1,904. And so that's that. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.